what I'm going to do is I'm going to be turning a bowl. It's going to be a smallish bowl. I'm going to be turning on this lathe here. This is the Record Power Herald. This is actually the same model of lathe that I use in my shop at home. And it is, for the size, a large workhorse, but I'm not here to do a commercial on the lathe, so let's get into the turning portion of it. Today I'm going to be turning a block of ash, and I'm going to show you what I do to set that up. First thing I have is this block of ash. I had marked my center where I want it, and we have an overhead camera here. And for me, the way I did it is I lined it up so the center, and you can see my mark where I initially did my layout. I did this so this would be centered on the grain, and by centered on the grain, I'm referring to the growth rings that you see right here. So it will be centered on both ends of that. Doing that way will produce a much better appealing eye with the grain, in my opinion, when you turn the finished bowl. You notice I've drilled a hole here. This is a hole for the woodworm screw that most chucks come with. Now, a lot of people, and I've seen a lot of questions in a lot of groups about the woodworm screw and how to use it. Let me grab the chucks I'm going to be using for this and a couple other items. Each one of these worm screws, does not matter the maker or who makes it, they all have some similarities. If you notice here, if you can do an overhead view here, I think Chad's going to try to zoom in, each of the worm screws will have a flat on it. So I'll show you where that is right here. And this is my woodworm screw, so Chad doesn't think I'm marking up product here for the store. Okay. Now, the problem that most people have when they are installing this device into their chuck is they're not really sure how to do it. See this little notch here? This actually goes in between this portion of the jaws right here. So this portion of the jaws, let's see if I can position this better that you can see. Can you see that better? Zoom. You might want to zoom in from the top.
We can't zoom.
Oh, okay. Let me do this then.
There you go.
So this little portion,
can you resume?
there we go. I'm trying to reposition here. This little portion right here, there's a lip on the inside of this. This is where that notch right here, trying to focus, that's where this notch by my finger goes, okay? Now, the big thing to keep in mind is the parts where I marked with the black marker, those are the portions that need to be actually gripped by the slides or the geared slides within the chuck. So let me go ahead and show you how I get that done. So you see what I'm doing here is I'm lining that up with the jaws. And I can see that it's not going to be rotating anymore because the jaws have actually gripped it. But I'm pulling it up. This basically acts as a safety device. See how that won't come through like that? That's kind of a safety feature, but once I've got that in place, I will turn that tighter and tighten that down. So now I've got my woodworm screw in place. Okay. And I will thread that onto the lathe here. Now, one thing I do that is not necessary, 100% necessary, especially for a bowl this size, is I actually put kind of a washer on here. I've made these, this is kind of just a wood washer. This will fit over my jaws on the chuck here. And this actually just acts like a little bit of an extra stability here. And yeah, I do have to kind of push it a little bit to make it fit on there. And it basically is just a washer and adds extra stability here when I screw this on. So what I am going to do is I am going to thread this on. And for those that have a chuck, or whatever chuck you use, you need to find out what the size and diameter that your chuck recommends for doing this. This is the Record Power SC3. They use either a 5/16 or a 8mm for you folks that are abroad, overseas. I believe Nova, I've used Nova for years as well. They use a 5/16 drill to drill this hole. So I'm going to go ahead and mount this onto the chuck. And if you do have any questions, procedure, how to do it, or why I'm doing things a certain way, by all means, please let me know. Most of the reason why I do things the way I do is because of the time I've spent turning but also a lot of the ways in which I was taught on how to do this. So I've got this really tight on here. It's not going to go any tighter. And I'm double checking, make sure I've got the jaws tight on there. So that should not come loose on me. Now I know it looks a little bit out of balance, but I've seen a lot worse before. Now, one of the features, and one of the things I'm going to talk about with this lathe, and it'll be my last commercial for this lathe, is that as I've gotten older, I've been turning for about 30 years now, and I've had a couple back injuries. And it does, after a while, it does hurt to lean over the lathe. So it does get you tired, you get fatigued, and so you just want to make sure that you're doing things a little bit more ergonomically or more comfortable for you. Before I show you that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark my center point with the live center on the tail, on the bottom of the bowl here, and I'll explain why in a little while. So I'm going to bring this forward here. I don't need to worry about turning this on yet, because all I'm doing is marking the center. Right there. And I'll just leave that right there, leave that like that right now. Now, you will see a lot of people on YouTube who will turn with the tailstock intact. And it is a good, safe measure to do that. So there's nothing wrong with that. I'm going to start a little bit with that here, and then I'm going to show you one of the features that I really like this lathe, especially when I get to the point of doing the hollowing on this thing.
Tim,
Yeah.
you're on the big screen.
I'm on the big screen. Oh, nice. I've arrived. Yeah, sometimes I put instructions or directions on my phone just so I can get told that I've arrived. That's pretty sad, isn't it?
Yeah, you forgot to start off with a joke.
Oh, so since I get a lot of groans from one of our new guys here, Chris, I'm going to use the joke he told me so he can't groan at it.
Yeah.
So, why do scuba divers fall out of the boat backwards? Well, if they fell out of the boat forwards, they actually wouldn't be out of the boat. They'd still be in the boat. So, it is a bit, don't worry, I'm not quitting my day job. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start roughing the outside of this piece of wood here. This is a piece of ash. It looks like it has some spalting in it, so we should get some nice color in this as we get finished here, as the form starts revealing itself. Now right now, some of my friends who know me know that I turn very fast generally. So right now they're going to be surprised that I'm under 1,000 RPMs. And that's just basically to make sure that I get the shape balanced and more comfortable or appropriate in shape and weight. So I'm going to remove some of the extra weight here. Bear with me. If you ask a question, Chad and or Chris will ask that of me. I've got a face shield on, so I'm going to sound like one of the teachers and adults from the Peanuts shortly. So if you ask me that.
We do have one question.
Yeah.
From James.
Okay.
How much wood can that wood screw in the chuck hold? I feel like it would bend.
That's a good question.
It is a very good question. Basically, if you feel like you're having to question it, I wouldn't do it. I have turned, actually I turned on this lathe at the last live National Symposium, a piece of 6-inch hard wet ambrosia maple that was about 18, 19 inches in diameter. I did that with a worm screw with the 130 millimeter jaws as the support on it, and I didn't have a problem with that. Ultimately though, if you're not comfortable with it, use the support of the tailstock. Never feel like you can't do that. It's always good to be safe, no matter what you do. So if you're not comfortable with that, by all means, don't do it without the support of the live center here. Does that kind of answer your question, or do I need a little bit more clarification there for you?
You have to give it a minute to catch up.
Okay. Okay, so what I'm going to do, if I did not answer your question, or if you have other subsequent questions, please go ahead and ask them. I'm going to start roughing this. And for those that want to know, I'm just using a 1/2 inch bowl gouge from Record Power. A lot of people try to choose a bowl gouge based on the flute shape. And can you hear me okay with this mask on?
Try not. Between the mask and the turning, probably not.
Okay, so I'm going to turn this off here. A lot of people will ask about bowl gouges based on the flute shape, so I'm going to turn this actually right here. This is what we refer to as a half-inch bowl gouge. The English way of measuring is for the flutes. You'll see American measurements, they'll call this a 5/8 bowl gouge based on the shank of the tool. This, I would consider this to be closer, and I'm trying to get a profile here so you can see it in the camera, is kind of a, I would refer to this as almost a V style of bowl gouge. And it is very effective. Somebody's laughing or talking jokes.
Luke, I am your bull turner.
Okay. like my shield here. Okay. So this is kind of a V style of bowl gouge, and it's really a matter of preference. So I've had good luck with this one. And one thing you'll notice is as I start getting it round and trued up, I will probably start speeding the lathe up. This piece of wood is actually a little dry.
Drier than you thought, huh?
Oh yeah. We'll get some nice color out of that.
What RPM you on?
Right now I'm at about 2,400 RPMs. One of the things I'm going to do real quick though is I am actually going to lay out the foot a little bit here. At least the tenon I use for
What's a foot?
the foot of the bowl. Right now if I was going to put this as the bowl, this would be the foot, but I'm actually going to use this space here for creating a tenon to grab. This is what a lot of people will refer to as the dovetail to grab for the chuck, the dovetail of the chuck. It's almost I call it a misnomer because not all chucks have dovetail jaws. A lot of them have kind of like a little claw or something to grip on at the face of the jaws. Some are dovetails. Some are what's referred to as a spigot jaw, which is basically straight with teeth on the inside. Ultimately, the shape of the tenon that you're grabbing needs to be the shape and the profile and diameter of the inside of your jaws of the chuck that you're going to use, regardless of what chuck that is. I'm using, like I said, the Record Power G3 or SC3, and I have used the Nova G3. I don't have a problem with that chuck. It's actually a really good chuck. I have a few of them. Well, I have a few chucks altogether. Some people tell me I have a problem. I don't see it that way.
Learning it is the first step.
We do have a couple questions.
Okay.
James, are these videos recorded so we can watch later on your website or somewhere? That's a yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
it will be.
Turner's TV.
Yep, on Turner's TV on our YouTube channel. And then Bricks Woodworking wants to know if it's better for beginners to draw a circle on the bottom.
For what? For
bowls.
doing this? If it helps you see it, then yes. Like on a real light color piece of wood like this or maple, I definitely would. And there are times that I still do that, simply because it is a light colored piece of wood, and sometimes, and I'll show you here, sometimes when I do the layout line with the dividers, it can be hard to see. So let me actually back this up just a little bit and set that in place so I can show you exactly what that looks like.
I think he meant for your foot.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay, cool.
yeah. So I turn the RPMs back down on this because now a lot of people are nervous about this. So I'm using a divider to lay out my lines for where my foot's going to be. I have pre-measured this to the diameter that I know to be the interior diameter of my jaws of my chuck. In this case, I know it's 1 7/8 inches. There's a little bit of a divot on the inside of it, so I'm going to go ahead and put this in. Now it looks like I'm going to be putting both points in contact with it. It is not the case. So I'm going to show here, and I hope it'll translate into the through the camera here, but maybe not. So if you can see that, I don't know how far you can zoom in there. You can see that I'm a little outside of where that ring is. So what I'll do is I'll bring this in a little bit here. I would say that that's about perfect as far as the diameter goes. So if we can't see that, here's what I'm going to do. Normally I'll just use a pencil, but I have a marker here. I'm going to go overkill. And that's the diameter of my foot for my chuck. So yes, especially on the lighter pieces of wood, I definitely use either a pencil or, in this case, a marker, something that will make it stand out. If you're using a darker species, use a white pencil. That's completely okay. I've seen a lot of people do it that way. That's not a problem. So this gives me a jump-off point to where I need to create my foot. going to bring my live center back up. And I'm going to remove a good chunk of this material here with my bowl gouge. So that's the basis of my tenon there. And so I'm going to stop this real quick and kind of explain what I'm going to do next. Right now I have what I would consider to be almost a 90-degree angle. I have almost a 90-degree angle. Can you do a top view? Okay, I have almost a 90-degree angle right in here, which is kind of what I want for the jaws I'm using. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do an undercut. This is the bottom of the foot of the bull. I'm going to do an undercut here, and I'm also going to do a back cut, an undercut on the tenon here. So I'm actually going to be cutting a lot in this area here. This is about the only time I will use a spindle gouge on a bowl or the foot of a bowl. And so let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay. So that's where I've created the spot for my chuck to grab. So I've already got that marked out here. I'm going to clean up that marker mark there so it's gone. Marker mark. Not good enough. And I'm going to clean up this bottom real quick here, just because it irritates me. Again, that portion wasn't 100% necessary. That's just me being picky.
Pending Tim.
Yes. So what I'm going to do now is I've got a couple little lines here, and there's just a little bit of vibration marks that cause that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a couple of lighter cuts and try to do nice even smoothness all the way around here. One of the things I wanted you to notice, and I don't know if you have, is while I've been doing the turning, I'm hoping that if you've been able to see enough through the camera that I've actually been moving. I don't ever become planted when I'm turning. I don't do all the movement with just my arms and my hands. You'll see my feet and my legs. You'll see me moving with it. Or if you don't, you can see this bright green shirt moving side to side within the camera frame. The importance of keeping mobile as you can while you're turning is so important to the enjoyment of turning. Every turner, every pro class I've ever taken, or a class I've taken from a different pro, is expressed the importance of body mechanics and staying mobile and loose. So make sure that if you're not at this point, that you're working on keeping your movement going. I do this when I'm doing my spindle work, when I'm turning pens or other between center items, whether I'm turning gnomes or leprechauns. People have seen some of those on my page or here in the store. That's great. If you ever see me turning, you're going to see me moving, and I definitely recommend that. So I'm going to go ahead and do those quick little cuts here, and then we're going to move on to doing one little embellishment here with a custom little tool that I made. And actually, one of the things I'm going to do, I'm going to do that in a minute. Just a minute. Talk to myself here. You can see you're getting a much nicer cut there. I'm checking to see how much, if any, tear out I have. Doesn't look like I have any tear out on the end grain. I can't speak, but I guess I'm doing okay here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm kind of work on the edge here, and you'll notice here, I'm going to just show you through the overhead camera here, you can see that the top of my potential bowl is not true. I'm just going to kind of true up the edge here. So I'm going to put a little bit of an embellishment, like right about here. So I want to make sure I've got a good clean edge to, or top to base that off of. All right, so I'm going to put a little bit of an embellishment, like right about here. I'm going to cut a couple beads. Now, there's a lot of different ways to cut beads. I'm going to use a shop-made or homemade beading tool that I made out of an old spindle gouge. You know, everybody ends up having those tools that they can't use anymore or can't sharpen on a standard jig anymore. Don't throw them out. You can do things with them. So what I have done is I've actually, I made a couple of beading tools. I'll show the number one here first. I used an old 1/4" spindle gouge and an old 3/8 spindle gouge here. So what I have done, I did this to the 1/4" spindle gouge because I hardly ever used it, so I was able to get nice little beads out of it. But when you can't use the jig anymore, what I ended up doing is I was setting this in my tool cradle. I have the Wolverine sharpening system. And I basically looked straight on at the wheel and I balanced this out and I created a bevel here. You can see that right there in the reflection of the overhead camera. And essentially, I just made a beading tool. To make this cut effectively, all I do is I will take a diamond cone, the dust getting everybody? And I will just clean up the inside here. Because you need to do this anyway, because this will basically help remove some machine marks that are in there from the machining process when they made these. But you basically have a beading tool from a tool that you normally would have possibly thrown away. And I just made a couple small handles for me to use this on, so it makes it a little bit easier. I think I will do, let's just do one bead on this one. Now to use this, it's actually very easy because this is the old flutes of an old spindle gouge right here. So these are the edges. I make sure I put both of these edges on the tool rest at the same time, and I make sure both points come into contact with the workpiece at the same time as well. That way they produce the best results. So watch this here. This is actually a really cool little feature. you have a little bead in your bowl. Woo! So what I'm going to do here real quick is I'm going to just do a quick touch sand with the drill just to get this kind of evened up because I'm being obsessive compulsive about it. I'm going to generate a lot of dust real quick, so bear with me. Sorry everybody here in the shop. I won't do a lot of that, I promise. So yeah, this piece is a lot drier than we expected. But there you have your outside. You can see I just did a little touch-up sanding on the outside here. This one's got some nice little spalting in it, nice little grain in it. So what I'm going to do here is I would consider that, normally what I would do for this is I would go ahead and sand to like 220. Then before I actually hollowed it, I would actually spray this whole outside ring here. Not the whole vessel, but this whole outside ring here. I'd spray it with lacquer to seal the end grain. And then I'd probably paint inside these grooves here with like a milk paint, be it black or whatever color, doesn't matter, but I'd paint in here with a milk paint. And then I'd sand this all clean and I'd lacquer the whole thing. So that way you end up with a nice little highlighted feature in there. So I'm going to go ahead and take this off the worm screw and we're going to start the hollowing process, and I'm going to show you one of the things, reasons I like this so much. Okay, looks like it's running true. I guess I did okay on that. Got my chuck, my tenon for my jaws done pretty well. Now the first thing I'll do is I'll true up the face on this, but here is one of the reasons why I like this lathe so much. I don't know if it was a case of when we were starting up and the microphone wasn't working, I was already talking about it and I have to go back to this, but regardless, I've been turning long enough now and I've had enough, couple back injuries over the years, so it does get a little tiring and does hurt the back after a while of leaning over the bed to do the hollowing. So what I'm going to end up doing, and one of the reasons why I love this lathe so much, is I can cant the head on this lathe outboard, which allows me to turn much more comfortably.
And a fourth camera.
We need a fourth camera angle?
No, we have a fourth.
Oh, nice.
Move the lathe.
Do a hand spin, make sure I'm free there. Okay.
Tim, why would you want to move the head?
Well, it's much more comfortable to stand and hollow like this as opposed to doing all this. Now the other thing I want to make sure I do is I want to take off this live center so I don't tear up my elbow, because inevitably I would do that. Most turners I know have all kinds of scars right here around their elbow from doing the same thing. And our new guy Chris has got one already. He's turned one or two things now. One thing, okay. So I'm going to turn the speed on this down a little bit. I'll get my shield back on. Just to see where I am as far as the machine vibration goes. It's slightly out of balance, but not a big deal. Okay, I'm about 2,000 RPMs here. I'm going to true up the face of this first.
a question.
Okay.
Jeff asked, so do you even turn, bro?
Is that Jeff Hornung from the Walnut Log?
It could be.
Oh, jeez. Hey, Jeff, you should be proud of me. I'm wearing shoes and I'm wearing a face shield. And, well, I have to. Today it's actually chilly. We're at like 84 degrees, so it's chilly here today. For those that don't know, Jeff is actually, he's a good friend of mine. He's also a really good turner. He owns the Walnut Log. He's actually doing some really neat ornamental work with the ornamental turner that comes from Nova. So if you have a chance, check out his page as well. He does some really nice stuff as well. There, Jeff, you got your commercial too.
Todd has to go. He'll see you later.
Okay, Todd. Good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. Now, one of the questions I always get asked in relation to bowl turning is about how to get consistent wall thickness and get your direction of cut. The big thing is, obviously it's going to take practice. There's going to be time, things that you need to do to make sure that you're doing everything correctly. The big thing is, especially with traditional tools, is finding your angle of cut or your direction of cut and matching the outside profile, because that's typically where most people have their problem. They'll find one area like right near the lip is even for about an inch or so, then it starts getting really thick near the bottom. The thing to keep in mind is the angle of your bevel right here is going to be your direction of cut. If you want to do an overhead real quick, I can show that. This angle right here is your direction of cut. So if I want to match this outside profile here, or this outside profile here, I'm going to do it on this side here so you can see on the camera. I have to match that angle or that direction of this with this bevel right here. For those that are interested in getting into bowl turning, does that make sense, or do you understand that? Or do you want to just see more of it?
See more.
See more? Okay. Especially as Chad and Chris are around covering up all the mics and keyboards on all the devices here, because it's so dusty. Sorry.
Tim,
Sir?
Jeff says put a pencil on the bevel before starting the cut. That will allow you to get a better idea of where the handle needs to be when you start cutting.
Pencil on the bevel? I'm not familiar with that technique.
Put a pencil on the bevel. Maybe he means like sticking out the front and you kind of shape it so you know which direction to move your... I don't know, we'll have to watch Jeff.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about that a little bit later, Jeff. That sounds like an interesting idea.
Unless he means you turn with a pencil, but that doesn't seem logical.
That'd probably be less effective.
Less effective, yeah.
Now, part of what I'm doing here is I'm listening to the piece of wood make the noises it's making. As it's getting thinner, the sound changes. So I'm listening to that as it goes. And so right now, even without even looking, I can feel a little bit, but I could also tell when I was getting there that it's still a little thick right here. And I'm going to just kind of blend that in, and I'm almost done with the inside here. This won't take me too long to finish up.
Tim, Jeff says pencils have parallel sides. It makes visualizing the direction of the cut easier.
Okay, that makes sense. That's a good idea.
Hey, what if you're a pen turner and all you have is carbide tools? Can you turn a bowl?
You can absolutely turn a bowl with carbide tools. In fact, you can actually do some pretty good results with it. The thing with carbide tools is in turning bowls, you need to learn when to do the hogging out or removing a lot more material and then doing the finishing cuts. So there's going to be different types of cuts you can even do with the same tool. I would actually recommend the round cutter if you're going to do a carbide tool. Just take your time in learning how to do the different types of cuts, because with obviously the bigger stuff I'm pulling off, I'm taking big heavy cuts, but if you saw like I did on the outside of the bowl, I backed off and I took real light cuts with it to get a more finished result. Do the same thing on the inside with the bowl gouge, but you can also do the same thing with your carbide tools if you have those. Bear with me, I'm going to reposition my tool rest here. Does that answer your question, I hope?
Chris wants to know why there's black in that bowl.
This apparently had what's called some spalting, so apparently some moisture got in there at some point in the process of when it was either growing or cut. And so it creates a little bit of either black streaking, and this actually can be a couple different things. So it could be mold, which is what the spalting is, or it could even be some bugs got into the tree itself, and once they do their business or they die in the tree, it leaves a streaking, kind of like you see in ambrosia maple. So it can be two different sources.
Comments?
Okay.
Sounds like you volunteered to do a bowl out of carbide tools. I can see about that. Kristen says you missed a spot, so please get that spot.
Which Kristen is that?
Willis.
Oh, jeez.
And
Says the one who is always missing spots while she's staining or spraying.
And Chris would know how many cups of cereal would that bowl hold.
If you had to try to guesstimate, how many
Half a
cups?
box?
Yeah, how much of a Frosted Flakes box could that hold?
College boy cereal bowl or a standard breakfast cereal bowl?
A 10-size cereal bowl.
You could probably fit, not the family size, the standard box of Frosted Flakes, you could probably put half the box in there.
Nice.
They're pretty close to the depth I want to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick sand on the inside. And for the mercy of my colleagues here, I'm not going to do any more.
Jim wants to know, how are you figuring the depth of the bowl?
So, just based on experience, but there's a lot of little jigs you can make or fixtures. It's actually pretty easy to do. An easy way to tell is, let's see.
And Jeff Hornub has to take off.
Well, thanks for coming by, Jeff.
Same with Richard.
All right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm basically gauging how deep, or basically the top of here, and I'm going to put this here. This gives me my idea as far as my depth goes right here in the center mass. So what I can do is put this back up here, and I can guess. So if you can see from the top angle here, you can see where the bottom of my foot is. So the bottom of the inside from the top view is probably right about here. Right about there, which is perfect because all I have to do is take that foot off and I have a nice little set for this place to sit on. So some of you are probably wondering how I'm going to take that foot off that I'm holding right now. Well, there are as many different ways as turning a bowl as there are to turn a bowl. There are as many different ways to finish off the bottom of a bowl. I always like the idea of doing a bowl and having it be so you can't tell how the bowl was actually held on the lathe or how it was actually turned. I mean, obviously for those who turn, we know all the ins and outs and the tricks and things like that, but I don't like to leave a lot of telltale signs of how it was turned. So I'm going to show you one of the quick and easy ways to get this done. And so before I turn that on, I'm going to make sure I turn that down. So bear with me for just a moment. I'm going to get this set up. I'm going to use what's called a set of coal jaws or plate jaws. They're called different things for different people or different companies. So bear with me for just a second while I get that set up. If you have any questions, please feel free to go ahead and ask while I'm getting this done. And Kristen, you missed a spot too, so. Here, hold that, Kristen, see how light it is.
Oh my gosh. Kristen says, I miss all the spots, and I will fight you.
Well, at least she said she'll fight me. Normally she says she'll cut me, so.
Nice.
Okay, so, let me have that back, please. And then, so this is a set of plate jaws. Basically, it will allow you to finish up the bottom of the vessel. And if I was really super concerned and wanted to, I'd turn this back around and put my live center back on the center point. It is a self-centering, so it should center without a problem. And granted, see how I'm just doing light little twists? I'm not doing a big crank on it because it is relatively thin and light. It's probably about 3/16 of an inch thick at this point. So don't worry about trying to crank it down. What I do is when I tighten these down, I tighten it just a little bit. I make sure that it doesn't rotate in there. And I also make sure there's no movement in, out, or anywhere in that. So I would call that pretty good. Most of these plate jigs have a speed limitation on them. I definitely recommend with these staying within that, which all my friends who know me, all my turning friends that know me, are surprised I'm saying that because I'm usually turning really fast because it's just the way I was taught. I'm sorry, I can't help it. But with certain tools and certain things for your safety and for those around you, especially in the case of a demo, I don't want to blow something up and hurt one of these brand new cameras or my coworkers. I don't want to do that. So I've got this here. I'm going to just turn this on and see where we are as far as trueness goes. It's a little out, but for this, that's okay. So what I'm going to do here, let me get my shield back on and I'll take that foot off.
Also, Carl Jacobson says, hi, Tim.
Oh, hey, Carl. Thanks for joining us.
Never heard of them.
Carl's just some guy from, I think, Oregon or something like that. I think he has a YouTube channel also. Now, right now, I'm going at about a little less than 300 RPMs. The specs on this say that I can go up to, don't go any faster than 600. So I am going to turn it up just a little bit. And I do have a digital readout that tells me how fast I'm going. Now I'm going to back that off. Okay, I am under 600 RPMs at this point. And with this, you have to take light cuts. Because if you take a heavy cut, it can actually pull this out of the fixture. And I actually need to raise the tool rest a little bit.
Hi, Carl.
Hey Carl, how's Jack doing? Okay. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to check to see that the base is a little less than flat. And what I mean by less than flat, a little convex. I need to take off a little bit more right here to make that happen. And then I would say this is finished.
Okay.
See you later, Chris. Thanks for hanging out.
Just unlock the door when you lock. I locked it.
Now, this is usually the point where people will, if they've gotten this far, they will cut through the bottom and create a funnel. So there is an unspoken club within the turning community called the Funnel Club. I'm trying to avoid that here. So I'm about done with this. I'm going to do a quick little power sand on this, and I'll call it good.
You doing your own lighting now?
So what's that?
You're doing your own lighting.
Yeah.
Carl said, eating well, hanging in there. Thanks
Good.
for asking.
Good, good. Glad to hear it. Jack is Carl and Robin's Jack Russell, I think, who's been a little sick lately, so I just want to make sure they're doing pretty well, or he's doing better. And here we go. Right there. It's got a nice little spalting in it.
Sorry.
And no worries. And there we go.
Okay. It's a good looking bowl, Tim.
Nice little basic bowl. And the big thing is, don't be afraid to practice. There's a lot of landscaping companies out there. If you're looking at a new turner or just trying to find sources, wood can get expensive, but the good thing is wood actually grows on trees, as Jeff would say. You can actually find, at least around here, we always chase storms when those happen so we can get trees as they're cut down. Or when you hear the chainsaw in the neighborhoods, people start coming out of the woodwork, or turners start coming out of the woodwork. So just, you can find wood, especially if you're practicing. The equipment and tools are expensive. If you're practicing, don't go spend a lot of money on a bunch of wood. You can find some good wood without having to do that. But that's a basic bowl. I would call that a large rice bowl, or large-ish medium rice bowl. Are there any other questions? That's pretty much all I have for it.
Carl says, very nice. We don't have any other questions at this time, but where can they ask questions when they think of them later?
So you can always send those to us on the comments on this through the YouTube. We will answer them. If you have any questions about any of the products I've used, most of everything we've used here, or I've used here today, we have here in the store. If you have questions about those little tools I made, by all means, put those in the comments, and we'll respond to those. But you can always get a hold of us here at the store. You can always comment on the Facebook page. We're always on the Facebook page answering questions there.
The video will be reposted on Turner's TV.
You heard Chad, it'll be posted on our Turner's TV, so it'll be Turner's Warehouse TV, that you'll see the video once we do a little bit of editing on it. And there you go. Thanks for joining us. Hope you all have a great rest of your day and a great weekend. Thanks for coming by.